Okay, so this should be the document that you got to using the link in the chat. And it's a bit.ly, and it says Interact Slides 2. So sometimes I notice that when I paste things in chat, it comes out nice as a link. So if you're sharing a document or a thing with your students, sometimes it comes as a link and the students click it and boom, they're there. And sometimes it seems like it doesn't. I haven't exactly figured that out. Later, one of you can email me and tell me what I'm missing. But sometimes they have to copy that and paste it into their browser to get that. So yesterday we had trouble with a few people not being able to figure out how to get to this document. And you might have to copy it and then paste it into your browser. Very, very old school, you could write down bit.ly/interact slides 2, and you could type that into your browser. That would also work. Yeah. And what this has is all the links we'll use today. So it's handy. There might be something you want to get back to. That'll be handy. All right. So here's the session handout link. I just want to give you a little bit of why, because slides is not something as math teachers a lot of us use. Some of you do. You've been using slides to teach forever, and you do a really great job making slides. I didn't use slides. I tended to use my DocCam when I was in my classroom. There are great slide decks built for all the middle school curriculum. Actually, you have 3 choices of slide decks. Math 1, the slides are basically from your ebook that you show, and Math 2, there are slides made that are in the curriculum guide. So about half of our curriculums have some slides you can access. So some people have taught out of slides, but a lot of us haven't before. So why did the district decide that they should send all the math teachers to a Google Slides training? Because that doesn't seem to be the first thing we think of when we think of teaching math. Well, when we are apart from our students, the things we wish we could recreate is we would like to be able to see our students face to face. We would love to be able to walk around the room and see what they're writing on their papers. And we would really love to be able to have them check with a neighbor, collaborate on something. And the technology that we are recommending to start out are the things that replace those things. So in the newsletter that I sent out to you, that forever long newsletter, because everyone kept sending one more question and I'd write one more thing, suggested a tech diet. And I suggested at the time, Google Slides, that really is helpful for collaboration. And that will replace, anytime I was wishing I had collaboration in my class, Google Slides can do that for you. And then I said Desmos Activity Builder for class management and whole group kind of leading the class. If you're used to Pear Deck, if you're used to Nearpod, those do the same thing that the Activity Builder does, that the Desmos slides do. I'm not talking about a Desmos activity that you might have run before, or the Desmos calculator. There is something that's a Desmos slides kind of situation that works just like Pear Deck and Nearpod, except for it has math built into it. And so I chose, out of those 3, I chose the Desmos one because of all the math that's built into there. It makes it easier for a math teacher. It is designed for 7-12 math. So those are the 2 things I would start with, just to not overwhelm myself and my kids. And in every subject area, they're getting trained for Google Slides. So you can know your kids will have some familiarity with that. Out of class time, I had some recommendations. If you're experts of those and you wanted to extend to one more technology, I had some recommendations, but this is where we're starting. So today, Google Slides is where we're starting. So I want to tell you a little bit. Yesterday we ran this and we had some questions from people like, I don't even know what a Google Slide is. Where do we start? So I want to just start right at the very beginning about how that goes. And then Scott will lead you through some really helpful stuff. So right now I'm not sharing a presentation with you because the first question was, how do I even make a Google Slide? So what you do is you go to your Google Drive, and I know some of you started using it a lot more once you had to get Google Classrooms and what. You go to your Google Drive, and here in New, you choose Google Slides. If you've never chosen it before, you might have to hit more to find it. And then you have a slide deck. Now, if you're thinking, I use PowerPoint, that's the one I know. I would much rather use PowerPoint than try to learn a new thing right now. There's enough new things, right? The thing that makes Google Slides different is 2 people can work on it at the same time, just like a Google Doc. 4 of us could get together and type on something and see what each other is typing. And so it allows a kind of communication that a PowerPoint doesn't. A PowerPoint is a finished slide deck. That's great for presentations. But an interactive slide deck is something where we could work together and collaborate together. And if you would like your students to be able to collaborate, then that's really useful. So if I was making an interactive slide deck, I might be doing that because in class, I would have handed out a piece of paper, a worksheet or something, or projected a problem, and I would have said to my students, hey, everybody, try this problem, check with your neighbor, talk in your group, that kind of thing. So a Google slide deck is a great way to do that. So just pretend I had 6 groups that I wanted. It comes with 1 slide already. Before I start, just for my sanity, nope, just kidding, I'm done. I'm gonna change the layout to just blank because I don't want there to be all that stuff. And now I'm gonna make however many groups I want. So say I wanted 8 groups. There's other ways to do that. But so now I have 8 slides. So now I want to put a math problem that they're all going to work on. So I would need to snip that problem and save it. I did that earlier today, so you didn't have to watch me flub around. So I'm going to take this Math 2 Unit 3 Worksheet 1, I snipped 2 problems from, and I'm going to put it on these slides. Now it's easy to snip. You know how to snip and paste. It's easy to snip and paste. One of the problems with just snipping and pasting onto here is kids can accidentally delete it, and then they don't have that information anymore. So if instead you put it into the background, it will mean that kids can't accidentally mess it up. So I now I'm going to do that again, just watch, okay? I hit background up here, and now I'm going to hit choose image. I'm going to open my image that I just snipped, so it's in my recents, and I'm just going to drag that over. So instead of copying and pasting onto the slide, I made it the background. Now look at these blank slides over here. When I hit add to theme, it's going to add that image to every single slide. See that? And so in one move, it's ready for the whole class. Oops, I got background on this. I thought I had no background, Scott. Okay, so it's going to have that for every single group. Now what I would do with this then is I would have my class virtually here like we are, and I would assign students to a group. So when I was teaching this summer, I used breakout rooms, which we are currently on hold with while the district works out some legal issues. And so that automatically assigned the group, like a random group generator. And it said, you're in group 1, you're in group 2. And, but I can do it just like I did every other year of my teaching career. I can make a seating chart, which assigns groups, and you can know that you're in group 1 or group 2 or group 3. And if you're in group 3, then every day when we're in class and it's time to go to groups, you're going to go to slide 3. And I did not make these backwards, sorry. I have, okay. No matter what I do, I can't move this background because it's background. Okay. And so then you'll have your 4 students or 2 students, no matter how many you decided to put on there on that slide. You could even have 1 student on each slide. There's a better answer for that than, there's something else that works better than that. But for collaboration, that's how that works. Why I like this. Down here at the bottom, I can click this. Let me make this just a tiny bit bigger so you can see better. There you go. I can click the little waffle down there, right there, and I can see all the groups at the same time. I can immediately see what they're writing as they write, right? I can see that happen in real time, and I can realize no one's getting started. Maybe I better clarify the problem, which when we're just sitting like this right now, you and I have no idea if you're confused or if you're with me, right? I have no idea. So putting you on Google Slide gives me immediate feedback where I can see like they're getting started, they get the idea, or they're lost. I could see that maybe just group 3 was having trouble, in which case I might message in the chat just group 3. Or I might notice that group 3 doesn't know what to do, and I could say, remember you're going to be using your side angle, side things, get that note paper out, blah, blah. It gives me an opportunity to walk around my room and see what's happening as they work. And that's what Google Slides is really handy. Let me look at this. On this sheet right here, that note sheet, you don't need to go to it right now. I have a sample from a class I ran this summer. Some of you, I think, were even there, where we were doing 7th grade math, Unit 2, Lesson 2. And this was the work. It was a big class, so there were a lot of groups. This was the work. I like to ask my students to write in color because then I can see it better when it comes up. That's just a personal preference. This group was typing in black, right? And that was still okay. But I really noticed when the color comes up. As I was watching, I noticed that this slide right here had absolutely nothing coming on. So the first group I checked in with was this slide. Okay, what's going on with that group? They don't get something. So this interactive slides allows you to see in real time what your kids are doing. And unlike Pear Deck or Nearpod or even Desmos, kids can be working on the same piece of paper and seeing what each other is writing. And that is something that traditionally we've only had in classrooms. Going back to our slides, I'm going to go back and show you just one. For the kids to be able to interact on the slide, there's not a pencil tool where they can just write. There's some tricky things where people tend to try to pick at insert squiggle. It doesn't work very well. The best thing that they can do is a text box. So I can explain why these two things are congruent. If I really wanted, I could have them pick shapes and use marks to maybe mark an angle that is equal. They would be able to do that. My coordination is such that it takes me a little bit of time, but I can do that. Because of that, because text is easier than just writing equations or writing things like that, you need to think about the kinds of questions you give on these. You're not going to want to give something where you'd want all that math writing. You would like to give something that's like, explain what's wrong with this problem or something like that, because those kind of things students will be able to answer more easily. All right, I'm just looking at my list here. So when I was doing this summer and I was doing it with the breakout rooms, it was fabulous because kids would land in a breakout room and they would actually talk to each other. And so there are some ways to still get kids to be able to talk and communicate when you put them on a slide together. And Scott, are you going to show them that one with the homework discussion?
Yeah, so go ahead and stop sharing and I'll take over the screen there.
I will give it to you.
If I can find the place to share my screen. There we go. All right. Okay, sharing the handout, correct? Making sure I'm on the right screen here. Okay, so as we go down here, the first one in that interactive slides homework check link there, we want to click on that, and that's actually going to take you to this document. And so as Leanne brought up the way to create those assignments that you want to interact, things you want to be aware of, if you already use PowerPoint or you use slides, or even if you're going to use a document camera, having this as kind of a separate document is probably a good plan, because the same thing whereas the students could go in and edit what they're looking at, if I haven't locked it out, but I have my normal notes going through, students would have access. So it would be nice to have, like, you do a few slides of instruction and then they interact. But you want to be careful on the sharing rights as you go through. Like right now on this document, you should all have access to it as editors because we're treating you as students. So if you wanted to, you could go in, move things. And if I have things set up, I want to be aware of that as I plan for my instruction. So having a separate Google document, sharing it through Classroom, so they all have access, they can easily jump to it and go through as they need. But let's think of this as like a homework check. So we're thinking of instruction and we're gonna have large blocks of time. Maybe it's not a homework check, maybe you've given some instruction, you've sent them off, they come back and you want them to share a problem that they did, an answer that they have. Maybe it's a key problem from the previous day's homework assignment. They come back and you want to start class by everybody posting their answer for a certain problem. That's kind of the idea that we're going here. So it's really finding the good fit for where it comes into play. Now, she mentioned using text boxes, and like you have some tools for shapes to be used. We don't really have a drawing ability, but that's where we kind of start to look at the students using photos and submitting their work through that. If they have a laptop, they can add a photo and use like the camera on the laptop. If they connect their phone to Google Slides, even if they're using a laptop, it's really easy to upload a photo to and submit something as long as they're logged in to the account. But my key suggestion for that is when they're taking a photo, like we might have saw with the whole Google Classroom turn in their assignment, when they submit a whole page to us, it's a lot and it's really hard to read. From my experience, whenever students take photos into Slides and submit them, I always tell them a quarter sheet of paper. It's just kind of like the right size that it would be scaled appropriately. To fit, it's going to be zoomed in. They can only write so much that it's not going to be a mess. So just kind of getting them that idea so you don't get the giant page of all the problems. These examples that we have on the homework check slides that we have, like you can see those, but you know, keep in mind it's a good tip the fourth sheet as they're looking at. But this is taking a template that we have, and we'll jump and look at some templates provided as well in a moment. But like Leanne mentioned about assigning out, if students are going to work in groups, if you're going to have a roster or you would have normally had them in groups, it's kind of good to have it set up ahead of time. So when they go in, they know where they need to go. If I've numbered the students off alphabetically, somehow they log in, I could have this slide showing so they know what slide they need to go to. If I've pre-grouped the students, and so they always know which group number they're going to be for whatever time being, they can open up to this main slide and it's going to tell them where to go. It's almost like if they've walked in the class and it tells them where they need to go for the class. Now, we're not going to do that with you guys today. We didn't necessarily know who was going to be here. So just for the sake of this, let's go to the slides that we have, and you'll notice down in the speaker notes, it says names ABCD. If you could just go to one of the slides and next to the A, B, C, or D, type your name on one slide and claim it. Now we're only going to go, what do we have, 29, so maybe the first 10, not even 10, 8 slides. Let's try to limit to that. You have access to this document. You can go back and look later. Our group that came in yesterday, they actually did the last set of slides. I moved them down. So kind of looking in the first 8 slides, if you could go to one right now and put your name next to one of the letters, you're going to claim that spot. So we're going to imagine that you're assigned to it. Now, like we mentioned earlier, if I flip to this grid screen that's down here, I now kind of see where all the students are. I can see who's in which place and where they should be. It's kind of a quick way to check. If you've used Pear Deck before, this is kind of that same idea. You see where the students are. You can see if they're moving and if they're in the right place. As you all start to work, I can also switch to this screen and see how things start to get filled in. But so let's say this is our homework check. We've come in and let me go to a blank one here. We've come in, all right, class, I want you to go on. I want you to submit a photo of answer question number 1 that shows your work. You're going to go onto your slide, and in your box, your A, B, C, or D, you're going to put in your answer. So you as the students, you've put that in. Now, what I want you to do to just kind of see what's going on and just to get some thoughts and to get some practice on another way to have some communication is I want you to go in and leave some comments. So let's say this was my slide here, and I am A. Okay, if I want to go in and leave a comment about something I notice, I can select that picture, select comments, maybe, and it's now going to bring up a little comment box that has my name on it, and then I can say, maybe. I can now type something in and it links a comment to that box. If I want to go in and mark something else, I can go in, leave another comment. So as a teacher, this is a good way if students are submitting work, you can give feedback from that. But this is also something you could give students the opportunity to go in and leave comments to each other and provide feedback and input and kind of have a communication, kind of a non-audio communication that they could have. But I want to give you a minute. I want you to just looking at the slides you have from your teacher eye and your student eye, what do you notice about what's going on in this? And what I want you to do is leave comments on the slide.
Just in case some of you weren't watching Scott's screen sharing because you were busy looking at the actual slide deck, that happens in real life when your students are here too. Scott's comment example was shown on slide 10. So you could, if you missed what he was showing about how to comment, you can roll down to slide 10 and see how that looks. And the nice thing, like you said, about showing comments is the names appear. So students are going to get to know each other because they don't know each other right now. So that's good. So once you see what you're supposed to be doing, go back to your slide and add some comments. What are they supposed to comment on, Scott?
Just what they notice that's going on. As a teacher, what do you see? And even if you're a student and you're looking at the others' submissions, what you notice. Just to kind of get a practice of seeing what comments can do.
I'm having trouble. Am I supposed to be going on Bitly? Is that where I'm supposed to be going? Because when I try to go under the Bitly interactive slides too, it's not. It's telling me there's something wrong. Or am I supposed to go under my drive and what's been shared with me?
I think it's Interact Slides 2 is the website, but you can highlight that last one I just put in the chat, and that should take you to the slides we're looking at.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. That's good. On a couple slides, it looks like people are having trouble finding the comment box up in your toolbar. It looks like a little speech bubble with a plus sign. I don't know, Scott, if you look at Scott's slide, he can probably point you where that is.
When I've used slides in the classroom, I've used it in a couple of different ways over like a course of a long project they submitted, turning in an assignment as a review and different kind of ways to it. The comment is a really nice thing. As a teacher, I can go in and just give quick feedback. Now, maybe it's not on the whole group assignment, but even if you're one that you start to think about like giving them a slides as an individual assignment, that's a quick way to just kind of go through, hey, check number 5, check your distribution, that kind of thing. You can see where they might have struggled. You can see where they might have struggled and just give a feedback. Once they see it, they can reply, they can resolve it, they can kind of reply back to make sure they understand, but it's a good use. Other ways we could think about using the comments is one of the strategies we talk about is like SPY or, help me, Leanne, swap meet?
Swap meet.
Okay. You could have all of the students on their respective slide and you could say, all right, everybody move one slide up. So then the whole group, everybody shifts over. You could then have them where they then can comment on the work that they see and they're giving feedback to each other while they're looking at the slides from there. And it's just that way that communication can be. If you see, if I switch back to the grid view on my shared screen, I can see again where everybody is. I can also see what comments are coming up. So if it's you've given them time to go in and comment on each other's work, I can even see what's occurring. Not so much the messages, I have to flip back to the individual ones, but see what we're looking at. So after we have looked at now comments, maybe this is the assignment. You guys have gone in and you've submitted your answer. That is your rough draft. So now we want to summarize how you could have improved on your rough draft. So you've submitted your first question, you've checked with your peers, and now giving them a sentence frame, I want you to now look at the box in the middle. So whichever one you were, A, B, C, or D. I want you to now, claiming the question that you had, or the answer that you had, either A, B, C, or D, to improve your rough draft, how would you fix your answer from what you've seen?
And I just want to, you all know this, but I can't help say it anyway. I'd say it to my kids. You can improve your answer even if you have the right answer, right? You could improve your work. You could improve the display of your work. And so I wouldn't let anybody off the hook by saying, no, I got it right.
Yeah, like I look at this one and I see like person C, they were a little rough on the distribution, but they were the only one that showed their steps or showed reasoning for each one that they have. So even that type of communication can come up. Now, I'm showing this screen right now. So this isn't like a document cam type of thing. All the students, you guys, have access to it. So it is live going through it. If you decided to present something and show it, just because it doesn't have the names on it, even though because your names are down in the speaker notes, that stuff's still there. So you want to be aware if you're picking answers to discuss, they do have names claimed to it, but it is a shared document. It doesn't even have to necessarily have been shown. You could be talking in Zoom and say, hey, I want you to go to your slides and submit your answers. I don't necessarily even have to share this screen. It's something that they can do separately. They don't have to see it because they have access to this document.
And on this, then, whether you're using this particular thing or anything you're going to do in classroom, this brings up something that I didn't notice the first time I was teaching, because I taught 7 different classes, sessions this summer, and I didn't realize how much I needed to talk to students about screen management. Like how much I needed to say, make sure you can see my Zoom screen now. Make sure you make room, you know, all of those little tiny navigation things, make sure you can see the participant panel so you can raise your hand. So all those little tiny things of learning to be really explicit in what you want from students. The more you can work together as a PLC on Zoom sharing things, the more you'll realize what it looks like as a student. So if you get 0 else from this, seeing this student perspective and the ways that you get confused will help you lead your class. Not that you'll get 0 else.
Question.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I for the comments, I put it in. Is it for the overall slide or particular item?
It's going to be, if you select the item. So if I...
So Connie, what slide are you on?
I am on the second one, I think.
Slide 2, okay.
Yes, right here.
Mm-hmm.
So right here, if I go over your comment, it highlights that middle box.
Oh, so it's specific in the item.
And you can even see, let's see if I click off here. You're even highlighting it right now, so you see your name on it, but your comment fits to that box is what you have. If you just went to comment and had nothing selected, I believe it just selects it to the whole comment or to the whole slide. If you want it to a certain thing, you can click there. And I think I also saw something in the chat. You can right click and click comment. There you go. And that would also allow you to select a specific part to it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So kind of a way to see how you could bring them together, submitting the work, having some collaboration to that. This is kind of not a replacement, but an alternative option to having them take out their homework and check their answers as a group, having them talk to each other and communicate since they're not in person. This does give that option, and they can reflect and go back and summarize. So that's kind of our first look at it. Let's jump to, if we go back, and again, you have access to these documents as we go through, but we're gonna bring up in the main document, participant Google slide deck.
You can close that other slide deck we were on right now or minimize it, because you're gonna open a new slide deck.
So if you kind of saw Leanne's first creation of the slide, she took a blank slide and put the homework in, and then I bring mine up and it's all like color and boxes and has pictures in it. We didn't magically make that jump. This website here that Teresa Wills has made, she put together a lot of different templates that you can use, some math specific, some just general use. We're going to give you a couple minutes just to kind of look through and see where it is. You have the website as well, but we've kind of taken a selection of the slides to look at as well. just to see the different options that are there. Some of them are more just the blank template where you could put text and images in to start, and others kind of go off in the direction. So before we kind of finish up with slides and shift to the next part, give you a minute to kind of look through and see what the slides are, and if you have any questions, you can ask.
Slide 2 and 4 have some unique interaction opportunities, and so just for you to be able to see some potential of things to happen. So if you want to play on those for a second, but then I'd just look through the other slides.
Quick question on the last one that we did. Would you recommend that the students, do you want them chatting, like leaving comments, or are you saying that the teacher should be just pretty much leaving the comments regarding what's going in there? The students would be filling out those middle column to improve what's going on or find out what's happening?
I think that the oh, you want it, Scott?
There's just, I think there might be different fits for different scenarios. Homework check, I think they can put in their images and they can summarize. I don't think the comments are necessary. Maybe like a middle of instruction, you know, work on the problem, submit it, check everybody, go to the next one, leave comment, like that could be more of a discussion place, really how you'd have it in class. But a homework check, upload the image, write the comments. I, as a teacher, might leave comments, but I don't see the students would probably do that much.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was figuring.
I think that it's a teacher style thing. I could see with the homework check, getting everybody to this slide and saying, okay, I want you to look at everybody's work. I want you to say something you like about at least 2 of the things. I want you to, you know, comment on, you know, discuss the answer and see if you can find out why you have a different answer. You know, so I might give them prompts for things to say as they go, but I think it's a teacher decision. I would, on the slide deck I made with you that had the 2 problems at the beginning, you could have students like figure those answers out together on the slide. I think it's side angle side. Why do you think it's side angle side? Or, you know what I mean? You could do that back and forth. And I would call it something like a group chat or something like that so that they buy into it, right? Because they do group chat. You can't talk out loud, but you can group text, right? Back and forth using the comments.
All right, Leanne, you think we're ready to shift to the next one?
I think so. The one thing I would say was if you decided to give your students an activity, like maybe you picked slides 6, 7, and 8, you could give that even as a homework where we're going to work on it in a group together. But the one thing you have to be careful of that I messed up when I learned as I was leading the classes was that sometimes I would share the slide deck and it would be view only. Then the kids can't type their answers in it, right? So you need to make sure when you share a slide deck with students for work that you've given them the ability to edit so that they can access. And you probably need to set up norms that you don't add things to other people's work, you only add things to your own work. You could give each kid a separate slide deck, right? That totally could happen, but then you have to open 100 and bazillion slide decks, right? And the beauty of only having 5 slide decks you have to open for your whole to look at and see. Some things that are going to need to be graded, you want to have separate in work, but some things that are class work, we always let them look over at their neighbor and see what was going on, right? And so that's what this does for you. Yeah, Scott, I think we're good to go on.
We got a couple questions.
Oh, okay.
Could you assign small group slide decks? I believe within the sharing, you could just limit who you share copies to. In Google Classroom, whenever you make an assignment and attach a Google Doc to it, you can either give access of just this one document to everyone, or you can give every student a copy of it. So your 30 students would all have 30. Whenever I did group assignments with this, I did the assign to everybody, and then the students as a group were responsible to sharing with each other. Now, they were in person, so there was a little bit easier of like, hey, add me to your document. But then they'd share, then they just put their name of who it was. It made it a little bit easier than me going through and picking the groups in terms of just sharing it out to everyone. So it just depends on that, but yeah, you can share the access. You're just gonna have different versions of the documents, and I'd recommend having them write their name in the beginning of the title of the document. Otherwise, you're just going to continue opening them and not be sure.
Scott actually taught summer school for independent school. What was it? A charter school this summer?
It was an online charter school in Southern California.
With students he'd never met before. So he has a lot of wisdom about little things like that to make things go well. He's your go-to on that stuff. I see Richard's question about resolving the comments. Resolving would be the time I would do something like that is when they're trying to make a group product. Like in the center, you know how we said they each were going to comment on how they were going to fix their work in that homework slide. If instead the task had been in the center, we want you to make a final draft that's perfect and uses the best of all the other drafts, you know, to be able to make the perfect thing, then they might have comments going on about, oh, you know, we should use fraction instead of decimal so we don't have to worry about rounding, and we should maybe give reasons and stuff like that. At the end of that conversation, they might want to click resolve because now we're done with that conversation and it will go away. I would encourage them to not click resolve because it's the way that you walk around and hear what they're saying to each other, right? So I would kind of want that comment history. And somebody might change their mind and say, oh, I was going to ask the question and then I decided not to, and they might delete that one comment. But I'd like the comment history to stay myself as a teacher, especially if I only have to open 5 slide decks. Okay, are we good? So
we have Taylor had a question of when you post a slide deck on Google Classroom, does it automatically give students permission? I believe it gives them view access.
Right. You need to go in and fix that access and make it edit access if you're going to have them work collaboratively. And so some people might say, why am I using slides? Why shouldn't I just use docs? Because that also has this collaborative ability, and that is true. And the advantage with slides is just your paper management. Do you want to open 36 different pieces of paper from kids, you know, or do you want to open 1? Or even if it's 8 groups, 8 separate ones or 1. And so the slides is an advantage for that. Some people use slides too as an assignment for reviewing the chapter. So maybe like summary notes for each section, 1 on each slide, and then maybe the kids would keep that. Each kid had their own notes. So there's lots of things you can do extra with slides. But Scott, before we leave slides entirely, do you want to mention your math type thing? Because that's going to be a question probably, right? So, or whatever.
When you have it that students want to enter it, or even if you want to type it in, let me just go.
Okay, I'm looking at your shared screen.
So
now.
there is a Chrome extension called Equatio. You see that there? It lets you type text in, math text, and then insert it as an image in a document. That's kind of their best bet. Like person B did in this, it looks like they might have went into like Word or something and submitted it, but Equatio is an option to use for math type. As teachers, we probably have our ways to do it. You know, we go into like Word and have the equation editor in Office, and some of us still have the old math type program, but Equatio is a good option to use. It's a Chrome extension. If I click on it, odds are I'm probably not signed in, so it's probably not going to work. Let's see. Hey, look, it worked. It opens it up. I can type in, and then it inserts it in. Maybe. Then it'll insert it into the document from that.
Thank you for sharing that. I still cheat and open Word, type it in Word, take a screenshot, paste it in the slide, which is a longer process, right? And if you wanted your kids to be able to do it.
And from experience, when I remember I would use slides, from when I started teaching, I used PowerPoint up until the point I started using slides. So I would sometimes just make them in PowerPoint. PowerPoint's kind of nice about like the math type and the images and grouping. So like, I'm just more comfortable with that. If you're looking at this and going, I got PowerPoint slides, you can always go in and upload as a PowerPoint. It converts it to slides. The formatting might be a little weird. Some things might get shifted, but you don't have to start over. We got enough to figure out. We can work from that as well. Okay.
Just can I transition, Scott, or you got it?
I'm ready to move on The Desmos.
Okay. So
Can I jump in for a second?
for sure.
Taylor asked another follow-up. She was wondering if you could show how like in Google Classroom, like when you're creating an assignment, how do you give students editing access? I don't know if you can show that real quick or.
So really that's on the slides, not in Google Classroom. So you want to just change one of your slides right there. See where Scott is? Make sure you're looking at Scott's screen. He just hit share. And well, right now this one says anyone with this link can edit, but usually it would say anyone with this link can view. And you need to change that down from viewer to editor, like he's showing you. And so
probably good to leave it within Clovis Unified whenever you are sharing it out to them, so that way they're logged in. I'm thinking some teachers you here today might have logged in through your own Gmail, so I didn't want that issue. But yeah, keep it Clovis Unified. I believe it defaults to that they should have view access. If it's been shared to a group, you can always click on that group as well. And if you post through Classroom, so if I attach this document in Classroom and posted it, it usually already lists this, period to Google Classroom. I could click on them and I could change what they're shared. So let's see if it works in this one. So right here, so like I have Leanne here, I could change it. I'm like, yeah, I want you to now just be a viewer. It would go and do that. If I posted this through the Google Classroom, it would have that class and I could just change what their access was.
Awesome. So looking at that, Scott, that document you have shared right now, will you roll up so I can see that table again? Yeah, perfect. So we just looked at Google Slides a lot. There is so much more we could do with Google Slides. And if we had breakout rooms right now that we were allowed to use, I have about 100 other things I would show you about Google Slides. But the Google Slides are supposed to give you that collaborative groups, and it can work. Like we just did some, it can work, but it's not as good as when they can actually talk to each other in the breakout room. So if we get to a point where they say, yep, we got the legal stuff worked out and we're going to let you use breakout rooms, then at that point, I'm happy to run an after school session for some people who want to know how to make more of that. Right now, you're about to start school in 2 weeks. We want stuff you can use the very first week. We want to make your life easier for you. And so spending this whole 2 hours on Google Slides, which was limited, was not, we didn't feel like was the best thing. So remember, Google Slides really helps that collaboration piece and you being able to see your class and what they're doing. The other things that help you, the other kinds of slides that aren't Google Slides that help you see what your kids are doing are Desmos slides, Pear Deck slides, Nearpod slides. And if you have always been a Pear Deck person, I'm not going to take that away from you. You can use that. But we're going to focus, if everybody here, 99% of them have to learn something, we're going to focus on Desmos slides because Desmos slides are made for math. And so they're especially helpful for math. So I think I have a couple science people here also, and there's a lot of, because of tables and graphs and things that show up in science, I think you would find them very helpful as well. So Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you.
For those that have listened to me talk to Desmos before, please keep the eye roll to a minimum. I am not going to try to overwhelm you today. We are going to take a minimalist approach to Desmos, which takes a lot of restraint. But so minimalist approach is what we're going to look at. The goal is to get you something that you could use in the next couple of weeks, in the first 2 weeks of school. If we can get it so you can use it multiple times without having to restart, we have enough to do. We want something that's going to be easy and repeatable as we go forward. So that's the goal here. Something very general, minimalist template. So teacher.desmos.com is where I've gone to. I'm going to kind of walk you through this process. After I do that, I'm going to give you time to go in and play. So if you want to open it up and kind of see what we're doing, that's fine. If you want to stay on my shared screen, I'll kind of walk you through the steps. Back on this document, I will be referring to these links and bringing those up as well. While I'm at it, I'm just going to bring this one up. But we're going to walk through and then we'll give you time to play and we'll help you out. If you ever have Desmos questions after this, I can definitely help you on the various levels of opportunities that it presents.
If you are starting to break into a sweat because we're opening a whole other thing and you've got enough on your hands, then please don't open Desmos right now, just watch Scott because we'll give you a second time to look at it. If you're like, I kind of feel good, then you can try to walk along with him. Go.
Okay. Minimalist approach.
Right.
Approach. So those that are not familiar with Desmos, it's first kind of known as being the graphing calculator, the one that comes up that students will use. They also have activities that are created that are going to be, like we've talked about, slides, Nearpod, Pear Deck type thing, but very strong in the mathematics that they have. So there's opportunities of making sure the mathematics are clear. Teacher.desmos.com is the website that you go to on the teacher side to get access. Student.desmos.com is where the students would participate with the activities. Quite a few of there's textbooks that now have it. In our curriculum guides, we've linked to different activities. So you might have seen them as we've come up. When this opens up, you may not have the same activities I have over here, but when you scroll down to featured collections, you might click through and you may have seen some before, and they have kind of predetermined ones that the people at Desmos have created or vetted that are really good and solid activities. Now, they're very good, but they're very specific. So for example, if I look at the marble slide periodics, it's very specific to that. We want more of a general thing that we could continue to use each day. So we're gonna make a custom activity for that. So I'm gonna go to custom right here. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna make a new activity. Now, you may not have activities there. I've gone through and make some. We'll come back and kind of talk about those as well. There's other options to that, but right now, minimalist approach. So new activity. I'm gonna call it interactive slides. I'm gonna leave it as a link, so it's public. We'll talk later about the link and the private and the differences to that, but for right now, it's perfectly fine if it's linked, and then I create the new activity. Now, if you've done used Desmos in the past as a teacher, taking one of the pre-made activities with your students, they've kind of changed the editing screen to look a little bit more like what it normally does when you run an activity. This has changed over the summer, where it now has all of like the slides up at the top. And so it's a little bit different appearance. They've added some more options that we could get into in a different time. Minimalist today though. So we're gonna start by just making something I could use in class. Now, when we were in class, we used to use whiteboards. You know, the students would come in, they'd grab their whiteboard, you'd have your markers, half of them are dried up or smashed in, but they'd grab a marker, you'd have the erasers that end up all over the classroom, and they'd sit down, they'd do the problem on the whiteboard, hold it up, and we could check for the answer. Our goal for this is to create that kind of interaction, but at a distance. So that's this whiteboard, virtual whiteboard as we go through. But the same thing as when we were with the students, we wanted to see how they're doing when they come in. So we're gonna first make a check-in screen to see how the students are. So in that document I had the starter screens link. That opened up this activity that Desmos made. And it's not so much the activity that we're gonna come borrow something from it. So if I come down here and I click on one of these slides, I can see a selection of the check-in slides that Desmos has made for me as a teacher. So the first one is we have our happy and sad robot. We can drag the point, see how the students are feeling today. They can give us the feedback as it moves. They can then type in and let us know how things are going if we'd like to know. If you want them to draw a picture, they could sit and draw a picture on it. It's about the limit of my drawing skills with the mouse. They could then type some more stuff in. Just a general, let me know how you're doing. You can drag, they can drag a point. They can select a graph. They have a variety of options. You pick whichever works best for you. I'm gonna go with we're gonna go with this one. So I want to use this in my activity. So I can go up right here. I'm gonna hit copy. I can go back to my activity. And I'm gonna do Control V, which is paste. And now I have this set up in my activity. So when I start my class, I can share this with my class and get the feedback from it. I don't have to go in and drag things over and create. As you get better and more comfortable with Desmos and you look at this and you're like, I wanna fix what it says. That option is there, but right now we just wanna keep it easy for what we're looking at. So then we want to give something, a way to get feedback from the students, way to hear their voice. Where are they at for the understanding? Our virtual whiteboard. So I'm going to go back up here to my documents, and I have a link to whiteboards. So in the same way in the starter screens that we had, maybe it's going to load, we had kind of a selection. Here are some whiteboards that I could use. Blank. We could throw a graph on it. We could just have a grid or like graph paper, polar coordinates, and then we could really go into some other different options.
Eighth grade teachers, I hope you saw that circle graph paper and the isometric. You guys both use those in first chapter.
So I'm going to pick the grid. I'm not going to pick the blank one because even if I'm not graphing or drawing it, if I keep like graph lines there, they might write nicer. And maybe that makes it a little bit easier for me to read. But this is what I want to give to my students. So again, I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to my activity. And I'm going to go Control V. And I now have this whiteboard. So when I give it to my students, they could go in and they could write in an answer. Now, as you've seen with my mouse, it's not the most accurate. Some, if you have a mouse, if you have a touchpad, if you have a touch screen, if they're using a phone, their writing might be clear, but what if I give them a problem where I want them to explain and give me steps? Them writing out text to that may not be the best use, but I want that option there. So I'm going to come over here, and this gives me a list of different types of inputs or interactions that I have an option of. And I'm going to go to text input. So now when I just click on it, it appears right next to it. If I look, I now have a whiteboard on the left, and I have a place to type in on the right. So a student could now go through. Well, maybe they want to say it's 3x equals 3x minus 5. Okay, they can now submit that to me. But I can go a step further, and because this text box is here, it even has the option of doing math type. So it's going to have a math to it, so they can go through and write out their answers. Where that especially comes into play is if we have square root. If we have the math type in Desmos, SQRT will give us a radical. If we want to give it an exponent, we do the little caret, shift 6.
And you know what, Scott? You don't have to have those memorized because I never have them memorized. The keyboard, when the students are using it, they can have the keyboard pop up that looks like the calculator on the SBAC because it's in fact the calculator on the SBAC. And they can type it with that keyboard also. I even do it on my phone, although it's really, really crowded, and the keyboard pipes up. So it's handy if you have them memorized, but don't let that be permanent.
I'm going for efficiency.
I know, he's better than me, I admit it.
All right, so that another way they can give the answer. Maybe it's you want them to solve the problem. This even gives the opportunity for some students that want to draw it out and some students that want to type it. So you're even giving that opportunity for those different students that still want to submit an answer to you. You can have a different way of collecting the answers. We can even go a step further because maybe I just want to solve an equation. Guys, there's a problem on the board. I want you to solve the equation and give me the answer. Well, if I don't want all the work, or if I want all the work, but I want to easily see where everybody's answer is, I'm going to add one more piece, and that is math input. That's over here on the left. So that showed up now in the bottom right. So what this now lets me do is now I have this whiteboard showing that they could draw, they could type, or they could just come up and write in their mathematical answer. When you use this, I don't have to have them fill in all of them. I can put in this question and say, all right, I want you to go to Desmos and I want you to type in your answer in the math box. They go in, they submit, you get the feedback. You put up a question, okay, I want everybody to go up and explain the mistake of the problem I'm showing on the screen. They can go in, they can click on the text box, they type it in, and you can easily see where everybody's at. It's really up to you, and it's flexible to how you want it to go. There's nothing here that's limiting me to the problem that I'm giving. I can make them up on the fly or plan appropriately, either way. But now I have that option as I go through and look at the questions. I'm going to throw in, just name this problem 1. Let's make some more of them. So I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste. So I now have problem 2, problem 3, problem 4. Now, I don't know how many I need, but this gives me something to go back to each day. I'm not sticking myself to any problems. I haven't written in any questions because I'm going to be on a Zoom or I'm going to have some communication with the students. When I put this up live, I can figure out where they're at. Same thing with the whiteboards would have been. The whiteboards didn't have the problems when we handed them out. You can now use this for that interaction as they go through. So the last thing I'm going to do is I want to make sure, did they understand what I'm doing? Kind of a close, the opposite of our check-in. So if I go back up to check for understanding, I'm going to open up that collection. Looking at the options, okay, where are you at in your understanding? Does it make sense? Is it interesting? What questions do you have for me? This is good. How well do you understand and how do you feel about the learning? They can drag into the pointers. And then I like the confident and unsure, they're going to drag for it. So if I'm running this in class, I can give them this. They can answer it. I can figure out where they are as a class on there. But then also as they write me any questions, I can address them at that time, or I can always look and make sure I go back to them. Kind of gives me feedback, kind of like an exit ticket for where the understanding is for the class. So I like this one. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste. So I have my activity. When I'm all done, preview is what I was looking at. That's what it's going to look like when I run it. It's kind of good to go through and make sure you have all the parts that you need. If you're ever going through and you want to get rid of something, you can always delete part of it. You can drag more things in. There's a lot of options there, but again, minimalist approach. So I'm going to publish it. And now I have created my Desmos document. It now is an actual Desmos activity, just like the other ones that would have had before. If I look, it says mobile, tablet, and laptop, which one it works best for. If you have students try to use it on a phone, they'll get a warning, like a small screen warning, and that's because there's a couple different interactions on this. Not that it's impossible, it's just maybe hard with the zooming from it. A lot of the activities that they usually have this warning for the mobile. It's just not recommended due to the screen size. If I just had drawing or input, it would probably be okay, but that's just the warning that it comes up to.
And
why don't we?
You can still do it on a phone. Sometime try that before you tell your kids that. It's just hard. You have to keep scrolling to make sure you see the whole screen. But I do a ton of Desmos things on my phone because I'm too lazy to get my computer out. So just in case you're wondering, like a kid's computer's not charged, he can log in on his phone and be able to do that.
May be difficult, but it's not an excuse.
Right.
All right. So let's see what this looks like. So now we're going to create the class, and you guys are going to go in as students, and we're going to try this out. So I'm going to create a class code. I have this blank slate. First period's coming in. I create the class code. I click View Dashboard. And this brings up what I would share to the students. Now, students can log in through Clever, and they will have a link to Desmos activities. It'll take them directly to the login page, the student.desmos.com. So that is a way to kind of help the process. That also makes sure they're logged in on their Google account. You do want them logged in. One, it helps you keep attendance and make sure who is interacting. The other thing is the students can go back and access it again. So it's kind of like a benefit for the instruction time. You could say, a student could be like, hey, we did that problem in class. I need to go back and check. They can go into it and see what the question and the answer that they had for it. But you're going to log in right now, student.desmos.com, and type in the code. When you do that, you can tell me how you're feeling today. Or I guess it's for the last week or so.
So I typed in student.desmos.com in the chat. So if you want to copy and paste that into your browser, if that's easier for you, you can do that. But you'll still need his code.
So no matter how long you leave this box up, the moment you close it, you'll have a student go, what was the code again? I didn't get it. You don't have to open it back up. You does show the code right up here in the top left, if you can see on my window. Also, you can click on that and it brings it back up for the class. That's always a way you can get to it. You can share this link, Google Classroom or the chat session. You can share it into it and it'll take them to the session as well. Anyway, that one's a link. Oh, I think it's because it's the HTTP. All right. So this is the summary screen. If you've used Desmos before, you should be familiar with it. It shows us the slides that we have and then the students that we have in. What you start to notice is where all the students are. It's interesting. I've not given questions to do for problems 1, 2, 3, or 4, but I already have students working ahead answering the questions. Some have even drawn things in because it shows the dot. What I can do though is if we look on this, some good management ideas, you can anonymize your class. So that now gives everybody a famous mathematician as a name. So when you look on your Desmos screen as a student right now, you have the famous mathematician that you are. If I was to project my screen like I'm doing right now, you don't know which student is there. As a teacher, you can go in and just hold your mouse over each name and it'll bring up who it is. So you don't have to like switch off the anonymize. So if like Ruth Gonzalez is off track, you can hover over and see that it's Connie that's not working and paying attention.
Quick
I know you're
question.
paying attention, Connie.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Are they alphabetized in any particular way?
All right, so if I unanonymize, right now it's shown by the time they entered. Right here, I can click the time entered and sort by name, and it'll sort by first name.
And if you give a Desmos activity as a homework instead of like in class, it's really nice to have the time entered because maybe you would have checked everybody off and then 3 people came in later and did it. So knowing you can toggle back and forth between those is really handy.
Yeah. The other thing that's useful up here, let's anonymize again. I can go into pacing and that's going to limit where they're at. So if I want everybody to be on screen 1, because I want them to tell me how their day is going, I can select there. On your screen, it should have dragged you back to screen 1. Okay, everybody can get the input. So now if I go through my instruction and I want to move forward to screen 2, I can select this arrow and that's going to move everybody to screen 2 and they have to do that. This is like the pacing you would have seen on Pear Deck if you've used that. I can also give them the option to move forward and that's what the plus would be. So if I click the plus, now it's kind of showing where the pacing is. This is really useful if you're doing the Desmos activities that are out there, the pre-made ones, because on a lot of them, there's like certain checkpoints you want them to reach without keep going and kind of keep the pacing going. You can kind of go through, you can stop it, you can edit which ones you have. I can select which screens, you have those options as you go through, but I'm gonna turn that off. So for our activity here, it might be good to pace to make sure in the beginning they are where they should be. But if I'm working through this, oops, shouldn't mean to click there, and I'm just gonna give problems to check, I just wanna I wanna work through and let them kind of move as we go. So first up, let's see where we at are in summary. So this shows me the energy level for the last couple weeks. This is my check-in. I see on the right the feedback. If you don't share this screen, you're like I'm sharing right now, only you would see that. If you're sharing your screen through Zoom like I am, you can see that. That's what's nice about the Anonymize. It's not saying who the people are that are there. So just being aware of the question and the feedback you have. Let's look at our drawings here. I can click overlay and that shows me a image that I thought would be more useful. Shows where the students are. Imagine I picked the one with the XY axis and they drag the dots. That gives good feedback for where the students are at for the day, or our end check that we're going to have about the confident and unsure. So you can do the overlay. Sometimes the overlay makes no sense. All right, but that does let you look at what you have for the students, so you can get that feedback and where we're going. But let's now go to the first problem. So that's slide 2. I know, kind of mixing the numbers there, but I have my summary shows everyone. Student screen shows what they see. So I could put this up and give instruction. But as the teacher, I notice not everyone is on the slide I want them to be. So you click that, hey, look, now you're all on the question I want you to. So as the teacher, we've gone through instruction. Now we've gotten to a question. All right, class, I want you to solve the equation 3x plus 2 equals 8. So now as a participant in my class, you guys, I want you to solve the equation 3x plus 2 equals 8. So if I'm on the summary screen, I see Taylor just asked, does the dot mean they wrote something? That does mean they've inputted something. That doesn't necessarily mean they have submitted the answer. If I wanted them to, in the math box is how you could submit, Rhonda, but what we'll show you in a minute here is I can see live what everyone's doing. So at least from the summary screen, I can see who's done something on our work. So now when I go to the teacher screen, if I look, it shows me what everybody has done. So even if you haven't submitted, you actually have to type a number in the bottom right box. You can see my screen right here. You know, I should pause us. Everybody's working. I want to bring them back together. So up at the top left, we have a pause button. I would recommend giving them a warning for when you're going to pause them. You can count them down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Even with the warning, you'll have the students that were surprised that they could be paused. But you can pause them, especially if this is at a distance and they're working on their screen and you want them to come back to the Zoom session. I've paused them. Can't do anything else, and now we can look at the answers that we've collected. So even though you haven't submitted something, if you've written something on the drawing, you've typed something in the box, or you've submitted an answer, I have it all. So if we scroll, we see we had about five answers there drawn in, so people solving the equation. I have another long list of people going through and solving. And what's interesting here is if we look at these few that wrote out the steps and these few that typed the steps, I gave them the two options. Some were comfortable typing, some were comfortable drawing, but I've still gotten to that result. I haven't limited them. It's more avenues to get an answer to see where they're at. I also see that some of them have given me some steps as they go through, and so I can see where they're at. Again, if I want to hover over, I can see who the student was that answered it. I don't have to be on the summary screen. We can scroll down. So this is showing all of the work. Here we notice some of them wrote x equals 2 in this box. That is the regular type compared to the math type. But then down here is all of you that submitted an answer. Well, that's kind of a lot to scroll through. So if I have something with varying answers, I'm just going to hit summary, and now it condenses it all together so I can see, okay, it looks like about 8 of you did x equals 2, 7 of you did 2, a couple of you left it blank, and then we have the answer. So we can see where we're at for all of them, and you can get that summary from it. If I'm not sharing my screen, but I want to see if the students understand it, I can jump to this. Now, X equals 2 and 2, I mean, those groups got it right. Those students got it right. There's coding parts to that you can get into that would fix that. You can put pre-text in that helps it, but we want it minimalist. If I'm a teacher and I'm running the class and I want to make sure they get it, that shows me. So I've gotten that feedback.
I would just say to my class, in the final box, I want everybody to just submit the number or whatever. And because, you know, we're math teachers, yeah, we all got it right, but in the classroom, you might think that there would be more than one right answer, or more than one, not right answer, more than one answer that would come up. And this would show you, okay, I got a lot of people that said 2 and a couple people that said 6, right? And you would be able to see that without the division of between the two things. But you're right, there's coding, but you could also say, because we're all together, right? Like,
yeah,
hey,
and if it's, and in math type, some of them will try to type in the sentence, but it won't let them type a sentence. You'll get the famous IDK, but you know, you can see from that where it's at. And if you do start to those, again, you can hover over and you can see who the student was. Now, let's go.
There's some questions going on in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple things. So there was a little bit of confusion because some people couldn't submit their answer. I mean, someone then said they had to actually type something onto both and then they were able to submit. So there was some confusion about being able to do that because they thought, you know, you said you could just do one or the other, but then they couldn't submit otherwise.
Okay, so I've typed answer on my screen, but I've put nothing in the box, so I can't submit. This still shows up on my teacher screen. So that's still going in live. The fact they don't submit an answer doesn't mean it's not counted. If I go back, so all of these here would have been answers that were just typed in that top right text box. They didn't have to hit submit. Even the ones over here. So it doesn't have to be submitted. You can still get the result from it. If you want that, they would have needed to type something there for that. So it's optional. It doesn't have to be. They wouldn't have to select it.
So that submit thing just allows the computer to count up for you. We got these 73 people who said this and these 27 people who said that. That submit will only be counting that bottom box the way Scott has it set up. We could not even have that bottom box, but it's so handy to be able to see, like, what were the answers that we got?
And we do want that flexibility, because if I'm solving questions, I'm solving with students and I just want to see if they get the answer, the text box is nice, but if I just want to see, did everybody get 2? I could say, all right, class, bottom right corner text math box, I want you to type in your answer. And you get that feedback because we have this flexibility. If you're looking at this going, I just want it to be math type, you can make an activity for that, but I'm just going for a one activity as we go. Okay, any other questions?
There was something, I don't know if Michelle, you want to unmute yourself, because she says I couldn't find the keyboard. Can you show from student screen? So I'm not sure if she was using a different device or.
Can you unpause us, Scott, so we can all play with that while you're talking? Thank you. Yeah, usually I do have the keyboard. On my computer, I mean on my phone, the keyboard always pops up.
If we can't come up with that, I'll play around with that and I'll figure out where.
One thing, this is a great teacher move. Scott gave you that paper that has all the links for the day. When you have a question that you can't answer in the middle of class like this, right? If you've given them a Google Doc paper instead of a Word Doc paper, we can go back and type at the bottom of that Google Doc that we gave you how to find the keyboard in Desmos, right? So we can make a note to ourselves, hey, we need to add that information to the document so everybody will have that. So sharing a Google Doc is a good way to be able to go back and answer questions for people later.
All right. I'm just looking for. I should have picked a better problem to do. All of the solutions look the same. Okay, so let's let's look a little bit further. So I've gathered these answers, and I have all these answers here, and it's a lot if I'm trying to show it to the students. So if I want to then work off something from it, so if in class we've grabbed that student's whiteboard, or we take one of those solutions and we want to talk about it, what I've now done is take snapshots. And if you notice, whenever there's an input box, or our drawing space, or the text box, it has a little camera next to it. And what you can do is click on that, and it saves a snapshot, almost like a screen clip that it does for you. And what we can do with that is we can then go, turn that off, we can then go over to the snapshots, and it kind of saves all the images we have. And I can drag them together and then present it. So this gives that opportunity that if you want to take those certain solutions and present them, notice it doesn't have any names. I can then select them, and you can have a conversation about them. And this applies to any of the elements that they use on there. You can take the snapshots and you can share them. So if it's a graph, if it's a drawing, if it's text they've written, you can use snapshots to help you out. So if that moment comes up that you want to go through and show it to the class, you have that option. So we could even look at it like this. So let's go back. Let me pick I'm going to use this snapshot. I'm going to present it. And I'm going to say, you know, class, I see that in that first step, it looks like they subtracted 2 from both sides. But what did they do from step 2 to 3? So I want you to answer that now. So as a teacher, I'm now going to send you all to our second problem, the second slide, or I guess third slide, problem 2. In the text box, I want you to explain to me what step they did from step 2 to step 3. So from right here, 3x equals 6 to x equals 2. I want you to go to problem 2 and type in your answer. Did I unpause you guys? Hopefully. Yeah. So now as some of you write this, what I'm doing is my teacher screen, I'm jumping to that slide, and I can now see what the results are. Remember, there's nothing written on that slide that said what that problem was going to be. I had it prepared, I've given them the problem, and in their digital whiteboard, they're now giving me the answers, and I have that flexibility to go through and look at it and say, oh, you know what? Kepler's got a good answer here. Let's take that snapshot. I could go back over. I could present it again and go, well, what do you all think about that one? And it gives me that ability to interact with it. If I'm comfortable with doing that, I have that option. If I just want to use each of these slides separately, I can do that. But it has that flexibility. I'm not tied to using each slide each specific way. So another option, if we look, we had some type it in. Maybe on that one, I want to say, hey, in the top right box, make sure we type it in. You notice on the text, it got a little weird when you're trying to type in when it's math type. We had some draw it, but you can start directing them to that because you have that option. If I wanted to then say, all right, that was good. Now a new problem, let's all go to problem 3, and I want you to solve this new problem, then you can continue working through and they can go through it. I have this flexibility as I go through. I have the whiteboards to help me solve them. So we've gotten to the end of class. All right, class, let's all jump to the last slide. I want you to tell me how this went. How do you feel about our solving equations and checking answers? So it gives you that chance to now go through and see where all the students are. Once I flip over to the teacher's screen, I can see where the dots show up and the feedback that I get. Probably wouldn't have the comments showing if you're having students saying that they were struggling and questions they have and those kind of things. Probably leave that, but I could always just put the overlay up and I can see where we're at. Now, again, is the student logged in their Google password or Google account today? They can come back to this if they're like, oh, what was that question about 3x and 2? How do I solve it? They have access to it. you will also have access to go back and see where all the results are. And even if you're after class, you've gotten that feedback for where they are in the confident and unsure, you go back and see where the questions are, and you can get in touch with them and see if you can help. But that finishes the use of it in that activity that I've done.
Scott?
Yeah.
Before you do this, I just thought, because we're used to giving notes, if you had them try the problem and not use the text box, you just want them to try it and write the answer, or try the whiteboard part and write the answer, then you could have them add notes in that text box. Okay, so write yourself, now that you've tried this problem, write yourself a note. If there's a fraction, it's really handy to multiply through and clear, and so you could actually use that text box as a spot where you're keeping them accountable for taking their notes, right?
Yeah. So like this one, this person went through and they solved. Then in that right box, they could give a summary, a reflection to what they did. Correct. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry. I
like that idea. You also have the option of leaving comments. Leanne, have you left feedback on Desmos yet?
I have. If you find a certain student, right now you're on Andre Wheel, if you leave them a comment, then that student, if it's during class, that student that little spot where you're holding, that will light up for them. They just have to note it and look at that. They tell them that they have a comment. If it's after class, when they log back in, they can see the comments. So you can message a student and say, hey, I left you some comments. Or you can put a message in your Google Classroom, say, hey, I left comments on several of your activities. Go back and check your slides from today in class.
So that would start to get like level 2. We're a minimalist. Man, minimalist approach.
Sorry,
but yeah, those options are there. All right. So we've finished our activity. Class is done. So if I click on the interactive slides, it'll take me back to the document itself in teacher.desmos.com. Here's my session. I can go through. Now, if that ended, and like, all right, next period or next day, I'm not going to open the new one back up. I'm just going to create a new class code. It's now saying what the date is and what the time. I would open up a new dashboard. We're not going to log into this. I'm just showing you. Open up a new dashboard, and I'm good to go in the next one. It'll create a new session from that. So this is flexible enough that it's not limited to the day. So I could even use this the next day. I have a blank template. I just plan ahead in my notes where the questions are going to go that the students can interact with and give me feedback. Now, a couple things on here. I guess maybe we should play with it and then we'll bring it back. So let's do this. I want to give you a chance to go in and try to make something. The goal is make a minimalist interactive slide that you could use in the first 2 weeks, and even thinking ahead that you could use multiple times, something that's repeatable so you wouldn't have to go back each day and remake it. Okay, we're gonna give you a few minutes to go through. We'll be available for questions as you work through. When you want to create an assignment
started, they need to make a Desmos account. They need to get to teacher.desmos. Get that part.
Yeah, you want to go to teacher.desmos.com. When you log in, I would recommend selecting the login through your Clovis Unified Google account. If you already logged in with another before, that's perfectly fine. I think to link, it might be better off if you're starting fresh though to use the Google account, the CUSD long login. Once you're there, we're going to go custom and new activity, and that lets you start on the assignment and creating the assignment. The goal, think opener, whiteboard slides, and a close. On the document from today, you can access those collections and work from there. So let's see, Marcy asked where we got the confidence check and the reflections from. If you go back to the document that we had, the Google Doc, on the Desmos slide decks, the first 3 links there are the ones that I pulled from. After we give you guys some time, we will go in and I'll show you how you can go in and add and collect your own. And we'll also have a list of all the ones we referenced today. But they are on the document.
Scott, there's a question in the chat asking if they create an activity and share the link, will someone else be able to make changes to it? Or is it just like when we find one to use?
So there's the option to both. After we give you some time to work on, I'll show the differences and the different options you have. You can share it where they can just get it, or you can share it within your co-teachers.
I have an answer to the calculator question too, Scott. So.
Okay. We've had about, I think, 5 minutes of working, maybe a couple more, and we'll kind of move to our next part and wrap up what we have.
Scott, do you want me to tell them about the calculator? Because it's actually an edit feature.
Okay, yeah, I'll go and do that, and then we'll move on and wrap it up.
All right, so I'm gonna have to, so my screen looks just like yours, Scott, where the activities are already done. Say you wanted a calculator to be available on 2 of the slides or 1 of the slides, you would need to edit your activity to add that. So if they've already published their activity, they'll have to edit it to add it. Do you want to show that, Scott? Do you want me to show it?
I'll show it. You can walk me through it.
Okay.
So let's wherever you're at, let's go ahead and in the top right, go ahead and hit publish, and it's going to save what you have, and we'll kind of walk you through again how to edit to see the calculator, and then some of the other features that you can always go back and work on this. And you can always go back, save a new draft, and republish as we go. So we come back to our Zoom screen. I'm showing my interactive slides document where I could have started a session, and from that, if I want to edit the slide that I have, I come up to the 3 dots and I go edit your activity. This will take me back to where I left off.
Okay, so Scott, you're going to need to add a slide. So once you add it at the end, and then you're going to have one slide that is your graphing calculator that you can go to.
This one?
I already see a problem. Yeah, and then you see the graphing calculator down there. It says full screen, and you can pick graphing calculator, not graph. Down at the very bottom of your options, below button. Yeah, that's what they told me, but now I'm gonna have to look at it more. That's still gonna allow me, the whole keyboard is right there. Do you see that little arrow, Scott? Once you push that little arrow, and it allows the full keyboard. But there's a way for it to be on the individual screen.
And I'm looking, it looks like Taylor commented, it only pops up on the graphing calculator. It hasn't been on the activity.
Yeah.
So it might be to that. We'll look, and if we have a solution, we'll help you with that. So we'll get rid of that. So I'm back on my slides that I worked for. If I was still working through them earlier and I wanted to publish from this screen, we're going to click publish in the top right. Otherwise, if you stop from here, I think you just save it as a draft. So it won't make it available. If I've gone in and edited and I save a draft, it won't update. So you're always going to publish to your activity. So whether you just finished your first one or you go back to edit, again, you go back to edit and go from here. If you just save it as a draft, it'll show up as a message here, like edit draft, draft is there, something to there. So also in this screen, some other things that help, you can collaborate. So the question we had earlier about sharing it so other people can make changes, if I add a collaborator, I would type in the email address for the teacher that would also, it has to be the correct email address that they use for Desmos, but that's going to let it so they could go in and they could edit it the same way I could. So if you're working together and you've established that you're both working together and can make changes, you can add a collaborator. If you want to just share it again, if you just want to share it with someone else, you can hit share activity. What that does is it gives you the link. So if you write it and your PLC is like, hey, that's great, we want to use it also, but we're not going to change it, that's the link you would send them. That's the same link that if you opened up Marble Slides or any of the other activities, it behaves that way. You're the owner and then you share the access with the person. If you want them to be able to edit, you would go collaborate. Now, where collaborate also comes into play is you can make it a private and not a shared link. That in that case, you'd want to add collaborate, because if I shared a private activity with, they couldn't get into it. So you have to be aware of the options as you go through. Copy and edit would be if that teacher shared the assignment with you and then you wanted to change it and edit it and fix it, then you would click on that and make you a new copy of it. This is also useful if you go find other activities and they kind of fit what you want. You can copy and edit and make a new one for you, and then you have ownership. Now,
So
the question about collaborate?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Collaborate
what's-
button isn't there for everyone, and I need more information about that, not during this session. I know that every person who has a CPM book assigned to them, if you are logged into Desmos under the license, the same email address that your license is on, I know that you are supposed to have a Collaborate button. I'm not sure if every single person who's logged in with their long Clovis Unified address has access, or only the ones that have a CPM license. Later, I'd like that information from you. So it is possible to collaborate this way. And Scott, you can show the extra teacher collaboration piece also, right? You know how you can have your IA, you can let them see the dashboard at the same time.
Yes, yeah. So that one, if we have our session going on and we want to add a collaborator, this would let you add a co-teacher that could see the activity going on. This is also a new feature. So if you have an IA, a student teacher, a co-teacher, you're working together with another teacher for it, you can add a co-teacher onto it.
And they
I guess I would have to share that with them, but you'd have to share it with them, and they do have access to that now. The other question we saw was making the activity private. So you do have the option when you create it to make it private. You can also go back and edit. And right here, it has next to the name, it has the shared link, and that's where I could decide if I want the link or I want it private. If it's private and you want to share it with a fellow PLC member or another teacher, you'd have to add them as a collaborator. A shared link will not bring it up, which brings us to the next part. So if you're making certain activities, so let me pull in one here. Again, we went minimalist approach, something repeatable that you could use multiple days, and that's the goal for today. If I came in, I could create a new class code and start with a blank slate each time. Notice it does say those are earlier versions. That's just because I made edits, but this is a blank template that I could use each class time. Now, Desmos does have pre-made activities that you could use, and they're really more specific to a certain day. An example that we have for that is I've gone through and written activities that are based off of our Math 1 CPM curriculum. These right now are private. They're not shared because the issue is if it's a public link, this is where we get a little bit issue for copyright. Now, that's not for everything. Math 7 and Math 8, our curriculum is open resourced, so it's perfectly fine to make it and use it in Desmos and share it with other teachers. It is accessible. Our district curriculum that we've made, the stuff in the curriculum guides, the resources for Math 2 and Math 3 is district made, and so that's fine. That is public. But what you want to be aware of is if you're taking a textbook and using the resources for that. And the example we have is our CPM integrated one. We as a district have a license to it because we've purchased the textbook, but we can't share it out with others. And essentially this comes down to, if I made this activity, I made it public, a teacher from another district who did not have a license could open this up, and they basically have access to the text. So we had a little chat with CPM, and we were very nice and very friendly, and they agreed to work with us. So we do have these activities available. We were planning ahead with distance learning, and some of these are available for Math 1 that they do interact with the way to it. These are not a blank template. This is very specific for the specific lesson. They would not be efficient to try to make one of these for every single day. You would never sleep. But this is the option of where it goes. I've inserted media. I have different text boxes. I've put text in. Like, this is where Desmos starts to ramp up, and it has just an unlimitedly high ceiling that you could have for it. So these options are there. Those of you that teach Math 1, we are working with getting these approved through CPM, that we can share them with our Math 1 teachers that have CPM licenses. So it should show up
You should
on your
get them
account.
next week, unless there's some problem that we don't expect there to be.
We just got to call them up and say, hey, have you missed us? And we'll get that fixed. And so you should have access to some of them. If you teach another subject and you're interested in this, talk to me. We can work through things. There are There are basic levels of the coding stuff, and it goes on up from there, but these are good ways to get the interaction. This is not an everyday thing. It's just not efficient. What I wanted to hopefully share with you today is something that is just repeatable each time that you could go through. So it is where there are multiple levels you want to go to. We tried not to overwhelm you with what we have, but it's just showing that the power that what Desmos can have.
So
if I was in the classroom,
oh, go ahead, Scott.
I could see using these specific lessons, but also that repeatable interactive slide template is just something easy to go to that I can throw in and get that interaction. So it's really that balance of both. If you haven't used Desmos before and you're seeing this, start with the basic level, using it as a good tool for the interaction when your students are at a distance.
So remember when you were building your basic slide deck, there were all those choices over there. We just picked the text box and we just picked the graph. That's what the things we picked. But there was a place where you could do media. And so like I've been working a lot doing 8th grade stuff for the last couple of years. I could easily take a screenshot from my new McGraw-Hill curriculum, and I could put that screenshot into my Desmos activity. So the picture of the problem would be right there. So as I'm driving my students to slide 2 and slide 3, I know they're looking at the problem that I want them to be looking at, because you know how kids are all over the place. It's just like Scott said, it starts to take time. Like, how many screenshots am I going to put in? And I have to do this every single, day. And so do it wisely. Like if you have one where it's very complicated, you really want to make sure everybody's looking at the diagram, that's the time to put in a screenshot. Having something that can work for you every day when life has been crazy and you just have to turn on a computer and teach, that's really, really handy. So thank you, Scott, for showing us that.
Back to that main screen that we have, we can edit, we can copy, we can get to it. If you've made an activity and you're like, I like this, I want to use it. Even if you come across a different one, they also have the option of adding to a collection. And this applies to any Desmos activity you open up. Any of them on the left-hand column you could open. If you click there, you can make a collection of them. I like to go through and find like certain, when I was teaching, like, here's a probability lessons, here's quadratic lessons, here's sequences. And I like, just as I come across them, I just add them into the collection. If I want to make a new collection, I can name it, I can create the collection, and then it saves it to it. So now it's in that folder, I can go back and access it. It doesn't have to be yours. If you share among your PLC, if you come across another Desmos lesson, you can find them. Where you find that once you've made it is you go to collections. You find out that I've saved way too many. And so then I can click on that and there's the one that I made. On top of that, we've also made one today that has all of the slides that we've used. So where you could go, if you go back to our document here, you can also just paste the link, I guess. It says full Desmos activity collection from today. That, if you open that up, it will give you the collection of activities that we've used. Not that one. I don't even know where my own collection is.
Oh, really? There you go.
So if you open that up, the starter screens, the checking for understanding, the whiteboards, we have some other activities you should probably, if you're interested, go in and check out. This one is a good first day of class, get your students to figure out how to use Desmos and the other features to it. If you want students to submit their work, a teacher, Julie Rubach, has created an assignment and an option that they could submit it. So you can open up that activity and get some help with it. They have other popular common things. We have some games. Our CPM sample lesson will, once we get that cleaned up with the access, we'll take off the private link to that, but just that you can go through and find them. And even if you come across other collections and you like them, you can add them to yours, and so they're for easy access. Now, I don't have the option here because this is my collection, but you should have a box up here in the top right that says add to collection, and you can add that to save, and then it'll be in your collections on the left. So you can come back to it when you need it. If you ever need to find an activity that you've made, you can also go to custom and we'll have the ones that you've made. If you ever need to look up a session that you ran for a class, that would be within the history. So here's all the sessions that I've run.
Would it be
Go ahead.
Would it be advantageous for, like, when you're looking at history in the sessions that you run, would it be advantageous to name it either by day or by class, period, date, so it's easy to find if you need to?
Okay,
in which case you would end up editing the name of the activity before you started it. So you could edit it for be Monday, August 17th, and then you'd open your 3 classes from that day. And the next day when you opened it, you'd start that activity again and edit it to be, you know, Wednesday, August 18th. Okay. Yeah, you can do that. That's a great idea. I saw that that Audrey says she's been working on putting cool downs in for 7th grade IM. Audrey, are you talking about that you're working on them in Desmos, putting them in Desmos, or what's your comment there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So 7th grade, you might check with Audrey about that. That would, there is a lot of divide and conquer things that we can do here, right? And if we divide more than just our own PLC, then that's more things that can happen. So that's great. No matter if someone does something and you want to just, your PLC member make something and you like it, but you just want to give it your personal touch, you can always take a Desmos activity, like Scott said, and edit it just a little bit to make it yours. So.
And if you ever have questions, if you're trying to put something together and you can't figure it out, email me and I can help with it. There's really good resources in terms of the customizing the Desmos stuff, but we don't want to throw all of that at you. There's a lot of many answers for any questions you could come up with, but we want to find what's best fit for you, something easy, something repeatable, and hopefully that's what we got today. As Leanne told me to not overwhelm you.
Yeah.
Okay, Leanne, we ready for the last slide?
Yeah, I think we're ready for the last slide, Scott. And then we'll hang for questions after.
So if you go back to the document that we had, that says end slide, appropriately named. Okay, and so it takes us back to our Google Slides. Now we have this document that everyone has access to. And it's one where we could sum up and you could all go in and collaboratively write an activity from today's PD that you pledged to give a try to your students, give your students more voice in class. So what's something that you want to try today, even if it's an idea that kind of spun off from something we talked about, but go in and write your idea down on that Google Doc, and you're going to see other people as they're doing adding and collaborating on it so you can see everyone's results.
This is, in fact, an interactive Google slide that's from Teresa Will's collection. We just downloaded this template right off of her site. We didn't have to make it.
And this is what it looks like when 25 people collaborate on a Google slide at the same time.